got worse. So we can look at this, I think, as an example of what happens when you completely deregulate and get out of the way of industry. And even talking with Randy Huffman about it, or Mike Dorsey, folks who worked at the DEP, they would tell you, if they waited 3 years without going and checking on any of these facilities, they would get into an incredible state of disarray. They were a disaster when they went and looked at them. So, you know, it's human nature to try to make as much money as possible, and people will take advantage of situations. Companies will take advantage of them in particular, since in many cases, especially if they're on the stock market, they're obliged to. And so it does require a degree of checks and balances. And of course, there's a rational place on the spectrum, but I am very concerned right now that we're moving away from ration. So,
I mean, to see if you think about the checks and balances of the EPA and the whole Flint, Michigan water crisis, which is probably the most current and, you know, the biggest national thing, that I think was a great way to open this and sort of mix it in. But you know, for that, at the end of the day, there was, within the organizations, it was much more about protecting their reputations and protecting what they had said 15 years ago than it was saying, there's a mistake, we made a mistake, or we didn't catch a mistake, we're fixing it now.
Yeah, this is what I'm trying to get at in the film, and I tried to get at in my last film, is that this is a bipartisan problem, and it goes back as far as I mean, the Clinton administration is sort of the turning point when it comes to the issues presented in this film, but obviously there were issues prior to the Clean Water Act, and so they tried to address that. And then, yeah, these agencies are stuck with the problems of prior agencies, but in reality, you've got scientists beholden to political agendas. And when that happens, as I think Dr. Gupta represents so clearly, they have to play politics. And so they start to sacrifice some things in exchange for other things, and they rationalize not being transparent, I think with the hope of being able to accomplish more than they could were people to find out everything that was going on, because they're afraid that blame is going to come back to them. And so basically, in order to make it seem like they're doing their jobs, they don't do their jobs.
I mean, there seems to be this $100 million threshold of taking responsibility that I see with this film and what just happened in Flint, Michigan, where they step up and go, we made a mistake, we're going to put $100 million toward the mistakes that we made. I mean, is there a dollar amount on the amount of lives that have been affected? And just one other thing is, like, you list that there's 8,000 different sort of communities that are going through this right now. Maybe I made that up.
3,000.
Was it 3,000?
That's,
yeah.
I mean, Reuters wasn't able to actually check the entire country when they did that study. So it's certainly higher. They only, I think, got around to 60% of the country, but that's the number that they came up with.
And I don't think anyone's done a check on our water in the DFW area, but might we also be, you know, dealing with issues like this?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course.
If LA is, then
yeah,
I
mean,
yes,
I mean, soil is, fertilizer is everywhere. Our water has to come from somewhere. Usually it goes through the soil on its way to our taps. So if there's no testing, it's kind of like if we don't know that it's happening, then we can just imagine that everything is okay. And I think that's a big part of the system, is this illusion of safety. Because if we look for it and we find it, then maybe there's a crisis. And I would say that America in its entirety is facing a crisis right now. It's just inconvenient to talk about it.